the inspiration then for this much more important European Council of Europe Convention 108 on data protection, which had been acceded by most of the member countries of the Council of Europe. However, that should not be the end to the story, because also the Cybercrime Convention is a Council of Europe instrument, and similar to the Cybercrime Convention, which is open for accession to countries from all over the world, and which is actually very much successful in attracting other countries to sign this agreement. Also, the Council of Europe Convention 108 is essentially a framework that has an implemented mechanism to accept more members to it. So it has a potential to be a more important reference framework than just for the European region. So it is possible for countries that have already a data protection framework in place that would fulfill the basic requirements of this convention to also become signatories of this Council of Europe instrument, which has the principles from the OECD guidelines implemented then in this convention. However, that was not very much also pursued from the Council of Europe itself. That is a pity. And very recently there is now a new initiative. In March 2008 there was a meeting which has revived the effort to get more countries on board for this convention. And now there is a committee that is responsible to examine accession requests in the light of this recommendation and to admit more countries to this convention. In fact, several countries in Latin America perfectly fulfill these requirements, so they can easily, without having to adapt their legislative basis, enter into this international instrument. Best example, Argentina, because Argentina is also already accepted by the European Union as a country with an adequate level of data protection, which allows Argentina, in exchange with Europe, this very privileged position to have personal data sent back and forth without additional safeguards, because it is assumed under this test that in Argentina European data is safe and vice versa. Of course, the APEC privacy framework was already mentioned. There is certainly a certain interest to be part of this framework as well. I don't want to comment on the context and the content of this framework. It is definitely weaker than the Convention 108. However, it is, of course, possible that countries are part of the APEC, of this framework, and also of the Council of Europe Convention. There's not there's not necessarily a contradiction between the two. It's just that they have then two different thresholds, and they have to have the higher threshold of the convention in order to fulfill both requirements of both agreements. Last but not least, very quickly, free trade agreements and privacy. That's a new trend we see right now. Latin American countries are negotiating a number of free trade agreements with neighboring countries. And these free trade agreements are now quite recently containing electronic commerce chapters. And inside these electronic commerce chapters there are sometimes privacy provisions included. So we have to keep an eye on these developments, because that first of all would lead, if not harmonized, to strictly to a fragmentation between these many instruments that are in place. Peru, for instance, is negotiating FTA with Canada, and this includes a data protection clause that obliges the parties to adopt or maintain legal, regulatory and administrative measures for the protection of personal information of users engaged in electronic commerce. Mexico, the same, has an agreement with the EU, which is in itself a free trade agreement with the EU, which contains a provision that is rather, let's say, privacy enforcing. Whereas in the same moment, Mexico is also part of the Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America, the so-called SPPNA. And here, privacy protection is rather considered to be a barrier to trade. So we see here the two different notions. Everything that goes towards Europe is more like privacy as a value. Everything that goes more towards Northern America, APEC, is more privacy as smoothing out barriers to trade. And I would probably leave it here, and I'm open for questions, of course.
Thank you very much indeed. We are open to take some questions and also questions from the discussants to all the panelists to other panelists. Any questions? Yeah.
Can I also ask questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I have especially a question of this ILAC working group, where you said you are on the working group on data protection. Can you tell a bit about the strategy and the approach you are taking, and how much you think that can provide a way forward?
ILAC started in 2007 IGF2008 goal. Thanks. The 25 goals makes 4 groups of working: data protection, e-commerce, cybercrime, and electronic contracts, in special for the government. The conclusion is in the PowerPoint of the group of data protection is the necessity to promote in each country authority to protect data, also integrate a network in the region. Not necessarily the Ibero-American network, because the governments believe that the Ibero-American cooperation is very useful, but Latin American style of laws is different. We are not including the European Union, that is the standard for Spain. Another conclusion is that we need to create these 4 principles: legality, security, data level, protection, and more. This is the conclusion of ILAC 25. When ILAC 2007 finished and started 2010, the new goal is the ILAC 78, and said continue with the working. But the mandate directly is generate the document of framework, minimum points of regulation. So we have clear that is necessary authority in each country, and second, level that include these 4 principles. A problem, or maybe the situation, is that some countries have free trade agreement. Peru is the case, or Chile with European Union, or Peru with European Union, or Peru with Canada, or Colombia with Canada, or Peru with United States, for example, bilateral projects. Also in the APEC 4, that is including Australia, United States, Peru, Singapore, Chile, and Canada, if I'm correct, remember, including the aspects. So it's not one level possible to understand, but the minimum is created by ELAC. The governments are agreeing have this like a minimum, have internal documents of that. Each of the governments could help in that, but the group is working very hard in that situation, and not only in information society view. They are working information society view, telecommunication view, medicine, health information. So it's very interesting. But the more problematic area is the fighting against corruption, because to have a transparency in the government and have accountability from the citizens is necessary the information. But what is the correct level of that information? It's not two separate cases, it's the same, it's 2 faces of the same coin. So the working is continuous.
No, I think we have a bit more time. We are also open for comments from other regions that want to exchange some experiences or anything like that. We are open microphone.
I am Italian, Portuguese, Brazilian, so I can comment.
I will allow you to speak.
No, I want to comment a bit about what Graciela described regarding data protection by ISPs. What happens usually is, beyond any legislation or regulation, internet service providers, the access providers, usually record data because they have a commercial relationship with the user. And they have to record this data for legal purposes. If there is a demand, a legal discussion, or a legal requirement, or some complaint by the user regarding certain period in which he could not connect or could, etc. For these reasons, they always keep data, a log of the data. The data is basically the IP number, and the line, the identification of the broadband line which is being used. So this is normal. They already do this from the beginning of times. What is really problematic is what they do with this data. What are the assurances we have that they keep it, because they are, as Professor Lau told us this morning, they are the custodians of this data. Like, it must be treated like medical records. They are not the owners of this data. This is information which is the user's information, and to be used at the user's discretion, unless there is a legal requirement, unless the law demands that this is shown somehow to some authority. The same happens with the content providers. They also record data, and basically it's an IP number and the time of the session, and basically the pages the user with that IP number visits. Why they do that? Because they want to monetize your visit. Therefore, they will always record data, because they want to show how many people from this country or this region or this group of IP numbers, etc., are visiting your pages. And this is translated into advertising, which they can sell and get money from. So this is monetizing your visit. And also, you can't do much about it. They will record it. Again, the important thing is, what do they do with this data? Like Graciela said.
I think one of the interesting is, if they have the data, basically one of the data that they were showing in another session from the Brazil is that actually some of the ISPs actually just could provide 20% of their requests in terms of the data that they request. So it's not necessarily that they have this data available in all cases, but actually, or don't want to show, or for different reasons, there is a specific situation there. Okay, very quickly. Yeah, just another question, then we come back. Yeah.
Regarding data in ISP, collecting data, information in ISP, what is my experience when, suppose I am going to register my website, any space in for hosting, then they are not asking any proof from my side. That means I am not giving any information to ISP. Then what is the usage of this data? They can't use against me because they can't recognize me. Suppose I'm coming to India, I'm opening one website, I'm getting one space from one server. They are giving service to me, but without any proof, validation, without identification. How they can act against me in ISP?
Can anyone answer that? Or
Carlos can answer about the city better than I, because he's the expert
Yeah.
on this. Just let him answer.
Okay.
I don't want to take more time. Anyways,
Just very quickly, please.
yes, the fact is that it depends on the network through which you connect. If you connect from your home through a broadband connection, this is already recorded, and they can trace the IP which is arriving at the website with the broadband connection which originates this, if they want to trace you. No? So it's possible. Now, if you are in a telecenter, a cyber cafe, behind a firewall or using local IP numbers, this is more difficult. Then they can trace it to the real IP of the cyber cafe, but they cannot go beyond that. So probably the accountable agent or person or organization is the cyber cafe owner, no?
Yes, I will take that, but in some countries appear that have a lot of telecenters, like for example in Peru we have the 80% of the connection through telecenters, and the government want to make a law to register who is the person that going inside, want to control to child protection and other thing. So it's possible to follow if you have a registration or not. So I agree with you.
Do you want to answer the previous question?
I'm just making a comment to what Carlos said and answering, also adding, it's not only the ISP who retains your data. Even if you're using, accessing the internet, for example, in a LAN house or a cyber cafe or a telecenter, and if you use services that are based online and you log in and register to have access, for example, for your webmail or being part of a social network and things like that, your data is being, retained anyway, and they can do lots of profiling with that. This is, a monetary. This is an economic asset of the services providers on the web. Just to add, and another thing that I'd like to comment on what Carlos said about. We know that ISP needs to do the log. This is a central part of their business, of course. This makes it more relevant to discuss how and have clear policies and regulatory frameworks on how this data will be used, for how long it will be kept, and how it will be disclosed or not. Because without that, we are, completely in the hands of each ISP's decision and interests and concerns. So we need to have regulation on that. And for ISP, this is good as well.
I think we are close to the end of the session. If there's any other questions. No, I just would like to comment that actually I think that's just a starting point, and I think that there are many issues that actually started to be discussed here, that we are presenting different experiences, bring different people together, and starting a process of research and dynamic of practice of what can really be done in practice to protect the rights of people for their privacy and protect the society from different crimes related to the internet and in different situations. So I think that I just would like to thank you very much, and applause for our panelists for the interesting discussion. Thank you all.